My life begins with something that could be the start of a joke. And it goes like this. A Christian, a Muslim, and a Jew walk into a bar. I know historically the setup is a little bit dicey, but this time was a little bit different. This time, the Christian married the Muslim, and they had a daughter. That daughter grew up Christian until she met the Jew, converted to Judaism, married the Jew, and had a son. 22 years later, that son is standing here with all of you graduating from Harvard University. I am a proud Jew. I'm also the proud grandson of a Christian and the proud grandson of a Muslim. But that isn't a contradiction in any sense of the word. It's proof of a concept, and that concept is what I want to talk to you all about today, because my family taught me something I think this world could really use right now, which is that the counter to division isn't necessarily agreement. It's understanding. Our world today, all the way from the global stage to right here at Harvard, has been split into two sides. There are two sides to every story, of course, only two sides. Two sides to every conflict, argument, disagreement. Good and bad. Give and take. Right and left. Progressive and conservative, capitalist and communist, oppressor and oppressed, rich and poor, US and China, US and Russia, Russia and Ukraine, Israel and Palestine, Israel and Iran, US and Iran, US and Israel and Iran. All in binaries. At least they're presented to us in terms of binaries. Here's this issue. What do you think? What side are you on? Come on, where do you stand? Who do you stand with? In my family, well, my family wouldn't exist with that kind of approach. My grandfather's one, a Pakistani Muslim who grew up in the middle of the Indo-Pakistani War of 1947. The other, a Jewish refugee of the Holocaust, met many times over the course of their lives. As you might imagine, they disagreed on a great many things. And yet, one of the main memories I have of them growing up was seeing them sitting together at a coffee table, discussing everything under the sun. And when they weren't in close proximity, I remember hearing their voices over the phone as they called my parents, always remembering at the end of each call to ask about the other, how they were doing, what were they up to. Of course, there are many differences that they never resolved, but still they acknowledged each other, they cared for each other, they stayed in contact, and they debated with each other. Their vast disparity in life experience, viewpoints, ideology, faith, and beliefs. A point of contention, yes, but not a point of division. And yet, somewhere in between their generation and ours, something in the conversation shifted. The debates got louder, the noise got louder, the listening stopped. It got harder. On the news, on your timeline, at the dinner table, people speaking without listening, people arguing, having already decided their own allegiances, people debating not to listen, understand, or to learn, but to win, to humiliate, to be right. And somewhere along the way, the person sitting across the table stopped being a person and became an obstacle. Now, some would say that there are in fact people in this world for whom understanding is neither owed nor even worth the attempt. People whose very irredeemable actions or beliefs place them beyond the reach of dialogue. People who indeed have become nothing more than obstacles to the greater good. And maybe that's true. Well, my grandfathers survived the atrocities of war and worse, and they knew better than anyone that people can do monstrous things. They also knew the most terrifying fact of all, which is that the peoples doing those monstrous things, they were human. Not forgivable, not necessarily redeemable, but human, terrifyingly so. And it's precisely because of that human capacity that understanding them mattered. Dialogue still mattered. Not necessarily dialogue in the sense of extending grace or providing a platform, but again, understanding. Asking, how did they get to this point? How did they reach this conclusion? Why do they believe this? Asking these questions in this context holds a light up to the darkest parts of what it means to be human, and as such, we have to grapple with them. But such questions, necessary questions, important questions, are not only reserved for the darkest parts of human history. If such questions of understanding, why do they believe this? If such questions of understanding matter that much at that extreme of humanity, how much more do they matter for the people sitting around you right now? For that family member at Thanksgiving that you stop bringing certain topics up around. For that person on the internet that says things from a viewpoint that seems kind of unimaginable sometimes. For that student in section that you smiled at once and said, "Interesting point," and then went back to your dorm and complained about to your roommate. Or for that one friend that you started to phase out because they said some things once that just didn't sit quite right with you. Take about 8 billion of those people, put them together, and you get our world. Many of us who come to Harvard have dreams of changing the world, of leaving an impact. But you cannot change a world that you refuse to understand, to talk to. You cannot convince someone of something if you do not understand them first. Peace through understanding can survive conflict, while peace through agreement lasts only as long as everyone keeps agreeing. In most cases, understanding is difficult. Sometimes you have to fight for it. Sometimes you have to fight yourself and your own beliefs first before you can truly achieve it. It takes effort. My grandfathers knew that, but they chose to try anyway. So, as we all go out into an increasingly troubled world and divided world, I want to leave you all with one simple practice. Whenever you meet someone you disagree with, state your case, yes. Stand up for what you believe in, absolutely. But also, ask the other person about their beliefs. Ask them how they got there. Place yourself in their shoes and ask, why do I believe this? Listen like you might be wrong. That is not a weakness or betrayal of your own ideals. That is the hardest and most important thing you can do in a world that is constantly telling you, pick a side. I told you my life begins like a joke. Well, my Muslim grandfather was buried facing Mecca. My Jewish grandfather was buried in accordance with Jewish law. My Christian grandmother was buried with the cross. In a way, the punchline never really came. There was no resolution to the setup. They were all very stubborn, and they held on to their own ideals and traditions until the very end. But still, they respected each other, they chose each other, and at the end of the day, they were proud to be of one family. Look around you right now. Look at the people around you. The person to your right, the person to your left. You're sitting now amongst people of every belief and every background, a family that we have built over the years here at Harvard. Do we agree on everything? Ask the section kid. Will we ever agree on everything? Certainly not. The world beyond these walls, it has all the same disagreements, the same differences of opinion, the same divisions that we have. But I urge you, see the people in your class for who they are as people. Fight to understand them and their beliefs just as much as you stand up and fight for your own. And after you walk through the gates of this yard for the first time as Harvard graduates, do the same for the people of our world. Because in a time this complicated and this divided, understanding and a genuine willingness to look a little bit deeper is how those divisions start to heal. Thank you all, and congratulations to the class of 26.
As this remarkable speech comes to an end, it leaves behind a question that may be far more important than any political debate, social media argument, or international conflict currently dominating the headlines. What if the biggest problem facing our world today is not disagreement itself? What if the real problem is that we've forgotten how to understand each other? The speaker's story begins with something deeply personal, but its message reaches far beyond a single family, a Christian, a Muslim, and a Jew. 3 different faiths, 3 different traditions, 3 different ways of seeing the world. Yet somehow, despite those differences, they became one family. In today's world, that idea almost sounds impossible. Every day we're told to choose a side. Politics has sides, religion has sides, history has sides. Even simple conversations often feel like battles waiting to happen. Before a discussion even begins, people are expected to declare where they stand. And once those lines are drawn, something dangerous happens. Listening stops. People stop asking questions. They stop trying to understand. They stop seeing human beings and start seeing labels. Liberal, conservative, religious, secular, American, Chinese, Russian, Palestinian, Israeli. The person disappears. The label remains. Perhaps that's why this speech has resonated with so many people around the world. It reminds us that understanding someone is not the same thing as agreeing with them. Those are 2 completely different ideas. Understanding does not require surrendering your values. It does not require abandoning your beliefs. It does not require pretending that every viewpoint is equally valid. It simply requires the willingness to ask a question that has become increasingly rare in modern society. Why? Why does this person believe what they believe? Why did they arrive at that conclusion? What experiences shaped their perspective? Because whether we're talking about a family member, a political opponent, or someone living on the other side of the world, understanding begins when curiosity replaces judgment. And perhaps nowhere is this lesson more important than today. We live in an age where information travels instantly, yet genuine understanding often feels more distant than ever. Social media allows us to speak constantly, but not necessarily to listen. Technology connects billions of people, yet loneliness, division, and mistrust continue to grow. Many people now spend more time arguing than learning, more time reacting than reflecting, more time defending their position than examining it. The result is a world where disagreements quickly become divisions, and divisions eventually become hostility. The speaker's grandfathers understood something that many people have forgotten. 2 people can hold completely different beliefs and still recognize each other's humanity. They can disagree passionately and still respect one another. They can debate difficult issues without turning each other into enemies. That lesson may sound simple, but in today's world, it has become revolutionary. Because understanding is hard. It requires patience. It requires humility. It requires the courage to admit that we might not know everything. And perhaps most difficult of all, it requires us to listen when we would rather speak. Yet history repeatedly shows that the greatest breakthroughs, the strongest communities, and the most lasting peace often begin with understanding, not agreement. Understanding. Agreement can disappear overnight. Understanding can survive disagreement. Agreement depends on everyone reaching the same conclusion. Understanding allows people with different conclusions to still move forward together. That may be why the speaker's family story matters so much. There was no perfect resolution. Nobody abandoned their faith. Nobody surrendered their identity. Nobody won. And yet somehow they built something stronger than agreement. They built respect. They built connection. They built family. As we move forward into an increasingly divided world, perhaps that's the lesson worth remembering. Not that we should all think the same, not that we should all agree, but that we should be willing to look beyond labels, beyond assumptions, and beyond the endless pressure to choose a side. Because every person carries a story, every belief has a history, every disagreement has a human being standing behind it. And sometimes, understanding that person is the first step toward healing a division that once seemed impossible to overcome. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next report.